Alrighty, so let's look at the workflow. And in looking at the workflow, let's give you a little more introduction to the Git pod. But remember, what we're really looking at here, and I'll just open this as well right now, and I changed my color. This is really VS Code, which is the editor and that most people install on their systems. But anymore, you can just run it as a web browser or in the web browser as a web service. So there's a couple things I'm going to recommend you set up. One thing I do is I like the dark theme. It's just easier on my eyes. When I first opened this in the previous one, I'd already had the default set, so I just want to show you how to do that. And there's a couple of actual panels here, right? Like this is your files. If you want to search for something, this is if you want to run and debug something we'll talk about later. Extensions, which we will look at, remote Explorer, and GitHub itself. So I'm going to show you, for me, where this set is down here. Oh, my thing doesn't want to move. Let's get it out of the way. At the very bottom, there's a little gear. And so if I come into this gear and I go into color theme, what I can do is actually use the VS Code Dark, which is my favorite actually. But again, you can play around with this based on your own particular preference, of course. Truly dark, I don't see a difference. So color theme, Gitpod. Okay, Gitpod Dark's kind of nice because it kind of clearly shows the coloring of Gitpod. That's nice. Play around with that, see how you like it. So what you have here is you have your Explorer panel. Okay, and in my case, I actually have, I'm going to move this back, the terminal, right? So if you don't see the terminal, we'll be using that as we go forward in the class. You can also just come, this is the other thing I saw a minute ago, where I just went to Command Palette. Right, Command Palette here. Command Palette is very powerful in VS Code, and it lets you pretty much find anything. Like if you're trying to find a new terminal, right? Debug task terminal, just be able to find a new one as well. So let's go terminal new. There we go, create new terminal. So now that I know where that's at, I could actually come over here and drop this, go back into here, go back into the command palette. I could say terminal, new terminal in active workspace, which would be cool, or just in general. So if I dropped that, what this shows me is that a terminal opens. Now, if you don't know any command line stuff, you're actually going to get a little bit of this when you watch, which is part of the next thing you'll end up doing is like commands for listing files, PWD for current directory. We don't use a lot of this in this class, but it's still good to know. And if I do a control plus, actually will increase my icon size, so maybe it's a little easier to see. I wonder what the difference between GitHub, Gitpod Bash I know because that's what Git natively has. Interesting. So we'll find a little more about this as we move through. The most important thing right now, honestly, is over here. I want you to go into here, hit File, and make sure autosave is on. And it's just really important that autosave is on because, well, I mean, if you don't do it, you actually have to save the files manually. And to me, that's just so hard. I know it seems like not, but as you do more coding, you'll see what I mean, where it automatically saves it. Let me show you what happens when you don't. So actually come in here, I'm going to turn it off, my not favorite setting. And I want you to actually do this because I'm going to have you set up the folder that you're going to use inside of your private repo for the Udemy course. Okay. So right here, I'm going to click folder. I'm going to say JS lowercase dash bootcamp. Okay. Hit enter here. And what that does is it creates a folder. Okay. And then we're going to create a file. Now, in this case, there's nothing that's been changed, so our autosave is not doing anything yet for us. But when I go this and I go app.js, which is your first JavaScript file, okay? Now look at that. Let's see. I just want to see because it should actually not be saving. Okay, it's not. So in this case, I've only created the file. If I do console.log, hello world. Okay, if I do that, Cool. I've written my first line of JavaScript code, which is awesome, right? And I'll show you as we move into the course actually ways to output this to the browser, which would work as well. But the reason I came and did this is actually to show you this. Notice there's a little circle, little white circle, in my case based on my color, that's showing. And what this means is it hasn't been saved. So I'd have to come over here and do file and actually save it. But watch what happens when I actually come over to file and I hit autosave, then it automatically saves it for me as soon as it detects that I have code in there, code I've written. Okay. So again, the more you play around with this, the more you get used to it. You can make these panels as big or as small as you want. I typically kind of leave it like this. There is a getting started, which you can run through some of the concepts of, VS Code on the web, learning some fundamentals. Really good idea, by the way, especially if you're in this class early and you just want to get a handle on how to work inside of, in this case, VS Code, what we would call an IDE, an integrated development environment. It's kind of there. It's kind of an editor, kind of both. But now that we're here, the really reason I got you here was just to show you around a little bit and give you that, show you how to create a file and a folder. But in this case, and I want you to understand this, I'm going to show it to you. Remember, we're on the private repo. We're in our workspace on Git pod. So if I was to bring up GitHub and I was to bring up our organization 93, and I was to look at, because remember, I'm in the private repo in here, I would see that that directory we created out here in this workspace is not on GitHub. And you need it on GitHub for you to submit it. Okay. Now, we're not submitting work for this assignment. I'm just describing it to you. So, what we're going to learn right now is the workflow of how you make changes, which we've already done. So, this is our development environment. We've made changes, we've created files. We haven't run it yet. We'll do that later. Because for this purpose, what I really want you to learn is the workflow. But guess what? The workflow for this is pretty much the same as the workflow for your local if you were doing this. So rather than duplicate, I just want you to now, leaving every other tab open, go back to Canvas and find the Git workflow. And what's cool here is that I don't think we have to do any of this setup because it's Git pod's already done it. It's really this step that you want to do. And you can check this video out, but let me just walk you through it. So every time, you code, each time you write code and I give you what's called points to commit code, this is what you do. And let me just do it. So now down in the terminal, which is why I wanted you there, right? I'm going to do that first command. Okay. Now, if this is easier to pull out like this, to kind of have it there on the side, do that as well. Right? You can do that. You can actually do this however you want. Now, I have two screens, so typically I would just move it over to the other screen, but make your workflow work for you. So now I'm going to do git. I'm doing this command right here, git status. What git status says is, hey, you have a folder that's untracked, right? And in this case, we're going to go ahead and track that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and track that folder because now we know we have a file in here. So what we could do is just do git add, and in that's what this next command, we're going to stage these changes. Now this says local. So we know that in this context, local means our workspace out on the cloud. Okay, but the commands are the same. Like I could just do a star here, and if I had 10 files, it would do all of them. I happen to know I only have one folder and one file. And by the way, that's what the red is for as well, to tell you that. Now, if I up arrow, I do git status again, I now see, okay, changes to commit. It says, all right, now I have staged, that's your modified and you staged them, and now you commit changes, okay? So now I'm going to do git commit. I'm doing this command right here, -m, and I'm going to say app.js. Let's do this. And these messages get more important as you get into the course because I have specific messages I want you to hello world JS file. Okay. And put something you want in here. For this case, it doesn't really matter. So what I've done here is I've made the changes. Now, by the way, notice how the color changes as well, which is kind of cool because it actually shows you that you've done the first three steps. You've modified it, you've staged it, you've committed it. But here's the key. It's still not on GitHub. And that's where you need it to be so you can submit it because I don't have access to your workspace. Okay. So I'm going to up arrow again, but this time I'm going to do the status. And it's like there's nothing to commit. You've got everything. You're clean, but you do need to. You're ahead. So this area, this workspace, is ahead of your GitHub. Which remember, your GitHub is your source where everything needs to flow back to. If I could say it. So again, it's not here. Let's just refresh to show you. So the last step is git push. Let me just clear my terminal real quick. Let me just make this a little more clean so you can see this. So now we're going to do the last step, which is actually git push. And what this did is it actually pushed my changes now over to GitHub. And if you refresh here, then you will see this. And if you were turning in, and I will actually show you later how I want you to turn stuff in, but for this particular step, all I want you to know, or to be successful, you will have seen whatever you wrote here now appear on GitHub. Okay, so if you go back, and I actually recommend going back to watch my initial, let me just go in here because I think I'm going to do this for the last part of the assignment here. Is here where I talked about the idea of local versus cloud. So maybe doing this particular Git workflow, and in this case, Git workflow and Git pod workflow are basically the same. It's these three steps, right? We didn't have to do these other ones, but by the way, we could actually see, like if I was to copy, and I could have copied these commands, but it's easier and it's better just to write them. Keyboard bindings. Oh, is it not liking it that I could copy? Let me just paste. Oh, it doesn't like it. Okay, must be something. I'll have to play around with why. So I can do config -- global -- list. Oh, good. So actually, these are already set up for because of the way we did the workspace. We didn't have to do them, which is awesome. Okay, back to here. Back to here. So hopefully, at this point, I don't think I need to do another one because I think you hopefully have enough in these two videos to understand the basics of Git pod, right? So we've talked about Git pod. We've talked about, matter of fact, at this point, oh, I should have shown you. There is one other thing. Oh, what's it on to? I have to check that out later. Maybe that's why the key bindings for the didn't. Yeah, that's why I needed to actually grant it. Ah, I knew there was something in there. There's one other thing I do want to show you. I'm going to come back down here. I'm going to go to command palette. I'm going to go to dashboard for Git pod because I could have just done it, but this is a little easier, right? So one thing what will happen is if you don't commit changes, okay, and you close them and they time out, they'll give you a little message right here. Like right now, there's no changes, right? So if we were to come over here and I was to do hello JS world, right? I was to come here, right? Let's see if I go back here. Let's see at what point does it show the changes. Not yet. It's not until I commit them, okay? So I'm going to do git status. Let me clear this, right? So git status. Because now I have a tracked file. That's what I did with doing add before. So now I'm just going to do it. Matter of fact, I can up arrow again and just actually find the git add. There we go. Git add star. I could do that. I could do a git commit. Should have just done it. Okay. Minor update. Now, at this point, I think, let's see, it should be showing a change. Oh, it doesn't. Let's actually close this out. I'm just playing now just to see if there was a change. Because I was doing this the other day, and when I'd done that without pushing it, it showed me there was something out there that hadn't been committed. So it was just another way I'll play around and figure out what that was. And in this case, I didn't. Yeah, so that's part of learning. Just to figure out it shows it here. But if I do, okay, now I'm just playing, okay? Which is, by the way, part of what you learn how to do. There's one commit. It hasn't been made, but it doesn't show over here in the dashboard. Oh well. That's something exactly. Sometimes it's hard for instructors to not have all the answers, but in this case, because we're all learning together, I won't always have all the answers. I can commit to you if I don't have them, I will work on finding them because it's something I want to know as well. And with a new system like this, there's always going to be more to learn. I mean, with anything in the world, there's always more to learn. So anyway, thanks for hanging in there. I hope this helps you out. I think I will kind of drop this last one about the workspaces unless I, between the ending of this video, find the answer to that and want to show you anything else. Okay. If there's none of the video, you're ready to move on to here. You're welcome to kind of just check out the local if you want to, but you're ready to go to how did it go? Okay. Which would end your week 0 work and ready to start on the regular coursework.